I used to carry a 9mm all the time. A little bit of failure is what makes you stronger. Recycle your pain. You can't just say, okay, let's pull up my bootstraps and let's do this. I wanted more. I wanted more. I needed more. I needed to be successful for myself. Fears manifested in our
I'm
mind.
Scott Binsack, and thank you for joining me. Tonight, I'm going to be discussing true love, the story of the man. Happy New Year. Happy holidays. My first show of 2015, and a tough one for me. Last Valentine's Day, I did a show, and in part mentioned the story of my mother and a man who came to be known as the Man in the Moon. I didn't go into all the detail and the seriously moving and emotional story that affected me since I was a little boy. And of recent, over the past year or so, I myself became a man in the moon. I used to believe in that quote that says, if you love someone, you should set them free. And if they truly love, they'll come back to you. I don't believe in that anymore. I believe that if someone truly loves you, there will be no reason to set them free. Not to come back after their first choice didn't work out. No matter what the situation may be. I believe people throw the word love around like it's water. I've always been a romantic, and maybe because this story I'm going to be sharing with you about the Man in the Moon is part of it, as well as I also believe that for people like myself who have been sexually abused and abused as a child and didn't have a very loving home, desperately want real love, to be loved for themselves. And usually us who have these damaged childhoods are the ones with the biggest hearts and give the most underneath the tough shells. And I put on a good tough shell because that's really part of who I am. I've been hardened by life in situations, many of my own doing. And I have to tell this story because it involves this current situation that I have been going through. And I had to figure it out. I had to, because what I was being told over this recent situation is that I was wrong. That love is not all that matters in a relationship, and that intimacy is not all that matters. And I had put a recent question on Facebook to get people's opinions. And many people replied, and hundreds of comments. And 99% of them all agreed that true love would be all that would matter. If two people truly loved each other, despite financial situations or current marriage, relationships, whatever it may be, health. And during this relationship of being the man in the moon, I was told that you know, at times that the concerns on her side were that she wouldn't have her husband's pension, she wouldn't have health insurance for herself, she wouldn't have, you name it, I heard it. Yet at the same breath I was told, I love you. And before I get into that part of this story, I want to tell the story and the pieces that I didn't tell in my show for Valentine's Day because they're critical. My mom, a beautiful woman, wonderful woman. My mom and I had serious odds with each other. I was abandoned at a young age by my mother. She allowed abuses to take place and lived in denial. And my mother was a severe alcoholic, as well as my mother was not very healthy with her health, which caused her, which I'll get into through the story. But my mom and I, after she stopped drinking, when I was older, we became best friends for about 8 years. She still had her issues as anybody with a dependency does. And we had a strained relationship, but we actually became best friends. And we shared lots of things. I wasn't spoiled. Left home at 15. Wasn't given anything, really. Not even a secure home. And most people, and part of this situation here that I talk about, and I'm going to talk about, is the other person involved in my situation suffered a severe child abuse as well. And that was part of our connection, you know. And abuse victims are different in many, many ways. You could say we are damaged goods. And love is key to a child's upbringing. Love is very, very key. And it doesn't matter if you're separated or divorced or whatever, as long as the parents love their children and they show it. And they're there for them. So my mother was from one side of the, we'll call it the tracks, and from Long Island to Westbury. My father from the other. My mother from a lower to finally, at one point, middle class family. My grandfather was a New York City cop. They went through the Depression. My grandmother's father suffered a severe alcoholic. Watched her own mother be hung from a 13-story floor window by her father in a drunken rage. And my grandmother never talked much. She kept a lot of things inside. But that gene, I believe, because I believe alcoholism is a disease, as is any type of addictive personality. So, my father, from the upper middle class side of the tracks, came from a very prominent family, the oldest of 7 children. And if you've watched any of my other shows, a very, very dysfunctional family. They met right out of high school, and actually they met at driver's ed. And at that time it was expected for people to get married young. Fresh out of high school, a woman had her place at home, have children, and I've done some other shows, and it's like a stereotype mentality of this was a woman's place. So, as my mother told me, she loved my father, but she wasn't madly in love with my father, so to speak. But she got married anyway because it was expected. But at the same time, in high school, my mother was in love with a man named Charlie, who later became known to me as a little boy as the Man in the Moon. And he went and got married, and my mother went and got married. And after they got married, they ended up together. And I can remember as clear as day, and I think I was 3 years old, and I can remember 3 or 4 years old. My mother went to meet him on a offside road in Old Westbury on Long Island. And the car pulled up, and he pulled up, and they got out, and I saw my mother intimately kissing this man, hugging this man. I'm very happy. I remember it in my mind as clear as day. And after X amount of minutes, she kept checking on me in the car, and they did their thing, and they were talking and shared what they shared. When my mother got back in the car, she said, "Scotty," she said, I said, "Who's," I don't know what I said, but she said, "That's the man in the moon." She said that because from that moment on, they started to meet at different places and different things, and I happened to be with my mother at times. So if I went home and my father was there and he asked me what I did or what was going on, I would just say I saw the man in the moon. And as years went on, after about a 14-year marriage, my parents got divorced. During those 14 years, my mother saw this man regularly. Charlie was married too, a few kids. And the funny thing is that, not funny, but ironic thing is that he married one of my mother's best friends, Charlie. And she knew that my mother and this man and her husband at one point loved each other, or whatever it may be. Now my mother gets divorced, but Charlie stays married. And as the years progressed, they kept seeing each other. Yet my mother went on to, Charlie did not leave his wife. When I got older, a little bit older, in my 18, 19, I had asked my mother, I said, and I had met Charlie until we became friends, actually. Very nice man. And I'm pretty direct. I was direct as a child. I said to him one day at lunch, and my mother had gone to use the restroom, I said, why don't you, if you love my mother, why don't you leave your wife? And he said, well, I have kids and obligations and things like that. And at that time, to me, it was whatever. I was young. I know I didn't like the answer. Even then I knew that. But I knew he loved her, and I knew that part. I knew he loved her, sincerely. And he told me, he said, it's someday. Someday. And then the years progressed, and I can remember my mother getting cards sporadically in the mail because I'd stop over her house to see her, and there they were from Charlie, the man in the moon. Flowers from the man in the moon. That's weird. I'd call her, what are you doing? You okay, Mom? Yeah, I'm going to dinner with Charlie. Always happy. And my mother, throughout the years, tried to find this same love, this intimate bond with other men, because she couldn't have Charlie. And I know there's times she even got remarried twice. Both were failures. And she was miserable. She was miserable. Very miserable. And I can remember my dad telling me years later, he said, Scott, I love your mom, but your mom was always in love with Charlie Miller. And he even said he was the man in the moon. He should have married her. And my own father said this. And that I came to believe to be my father. Told him the story, but and my mother searched for this in other men, this love, this bond. And I had recently done a show about intimacy, communication and intimacy. If you don't have intimacy, and that's this incredible bond with another human being, you don't have anything. You may think you have love, or you settled for love, or you got married young like many people have done, and then they're unhappy. And there was so much put on this vows of marriage till death do us part. And in reality, to me, and what I've come to understand, and I've been fortunate to get a second chance at life from a near-fatal auto accident in 1999, in which I died for several minutes, and then came back. And the little piece of the other side that I did see, and I was dead for close to 3.5 some minutes, priest last rites, everything. What I do know for sure is that souls, we are all souls housed in human bodies. But humans need love. Humans need to be one. And that's why you'll see, and I'll say billions because there's billions of people in the world, searching for that love. It's a need. In the Bible, and I'm not a religious thrower here because, as I said, I died. I've been to the other side. There is a God, don't get me wrong. But even in the Bible, it's preached love. Love, 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 love. And there's, you can love somebody for who they are, but to be intimately in love with them, even after the honeymoon's over, even through everything, but you still have that bond. And my grandparents, before I get back to the story, married 50 some odd years. And I watched them. They were the best example for me, my mother's parents. Even in their older years, they were still intimate in all that they did. Kissing, making love. I had a very open relationship with my grandfather. And the love was incredible. And I guess through seeing that and having experienced real love once before in my life for a short period, and I ended up pushing the person away because of my own issues of the fear of being loved. I believe that love is everything, especially loving of thyself and then sharing that with someone else. And I believe that people have put way too much weight on marriage, as far as if you don't love the person you're with intimately, then I believe you should not be with them, regardless of the situation, whether it be for money, for children, for whatever it may be. And that goes back to this story, and now I'm going to go back to the man in the moon, Charlie. So as the years went on, Charlie's children got older, and my mother went through her marriages, and she still saw Charlie. She still had the affair with the man in the moon. So I'm using the word affair because that was thrown at me recently. My mother never called it an affair, nor did Charlie, because to them it wasn't an affair. It was their home, so to speak, their true love. And at times I got angry at Charlie, like, why aren't you leaving your wife? You're not happy with her. You don't love her. It's for the children, it's for this, it's for that. He made all the excuses. And I call them excuses because I'm a big believer and I've overcome such very horrible things in my life. And I know that life is simple. It's what we decide to do and what we really want to do. And it's based on who we are inside. And I didn't say that makes him a bad man, but now I'm going to, what I didn't say in the Valentine's Day show. came a point, I believe my mother was about 51 years old, and they were the same age. And there came a point where my mother became very, very ill. And she had a very rare heart condition. And she was about, I should say, about 50. And I noticed Charlie was around more, and I noticed my mother was more, she was happier, even though she was sick. She was very sick, and you never know. She was a beautiful woman. Always took care of herself, always presented herself, had more friends than anybody I could imagine. But underneath that all, my mom was suffering from denial and many issues. And one of them was her love for this man. The incompleteness she felt. Because she told me across the kitchen table, and it's hard for me, not because I'm crying, because my mother, of the situation with my mother, but what has happened to me. Or what I should say, what I allowed to happen to me. Of recent. So, fast forward a little bit. My mother hadn't drank in 8 years, and she had met another man. He was an ex-police officer from New York City. And he was a heavy drinker, and I had told him when I had met him. And at this time, I mean, I was fully running with the Italian mob, as I've discussed in another show I have done, growing up in the mob. And these gentlemen, these very serious bosses, were close to my mom. They knew my mom. They always looked out for my mom. And it was made clear to this man that, like, do not drink around my mother. Don't, like, push it in her face. But yet alcoholics have their own choices. It's not up to them, but you don't throw it in their face, obviously. About 6 months goes by, and I was in New Jersey, in Red Bank, and I'll never forget it, in a hotel. Long stay Marriott. I got this long, I checked my voicemail at that time when we had machines. And my mother was on there with this long, drawn-out message, and I had known right away she was drunk. For the first time in 8.5 years. And one part of the reason with her heart and the medicine she took, she had a very rare heart condition, and they couldn't give her a heart transplant because of her blood pressure. Was the doctor told her, if you drink again, you're going to die. And that was part of the reasons why I said what I said to Walter, this ex-cop. Basically, you know, don't do it. And I didn't care who he was, ex-cop or not. But we can't, one thing I've learned is we can't cheat death, and we can't cheat ourselves from the decisions that we choose to make, and that's the free will we have been given. I tried to call my mother back, and I got nothing. I made some other calls, called my grandfather. My grandparents always checked on my mom every day to see if she was okay because she was so sick. And I think the 24 hours went by, and the phone went off in the middle of it. No, I'm sorry, it was the following morning. And it was my uncle, my mother's brother, her only brother, who's also dead now from alcoholism, from a brain aneurysm, from the alcohol. That my grandparents had gone out. My mother didn't answer the phone, so my grandfather, being the ex-police officer he is, went out there and to my mom's house, knocked on the door, didn't know answer. Another relative of ours is in the Suffolk County Police Department. They called him. Police department broke in the door, and they found my mother dead in the bathroom. So I had to, my mother was 52. This was 1999. I was the only child, and my grandparents were a mess. So I did the right, what I was supposed to do, and buried my mother. And at this funeral, and my father's family owns a funeral home, and it's been a family business for many, many years in Long Island. I had to speak at the wake. It's one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. And then the room was packed. I mean, they put her in the biggest room there could be. And in the back of the room, as I was speaking, I saw Charlie come in, the man in the moon. And after I was done, and I lost it, and then pulled myself together during what I had to say, everyone left as the night went on. I stayed there. And Charlie came and sat down beside me. And he was a wreck. And I said to him, actually he said to me, Scott, I'm very sorry. And I looked at him and I said, I said, she loved you dearly, more than anything. And he opened up his jacket and he pulled out a paper and an envelope. And he handed it to me. And I opened it. It was his divorce papers. And he said, I was too late. And he said, the funniest thing was, not funny, the sad part of it was, he goes, I was going to surprise her with this at dinner. We had plans for dinner, and that's why my mom was in the bathroom. My mom was in the bathroom getting ready that late afternoon to go to dinner with Charlie. Charlie was going to surprise her that he had gotten divorced and that he was going to marry my mom. And ever since that time, and then after my mom's death, and then I had my auto accident. This was 92. That from 92 to 99 to 2000, my life was just chaos. I was divorced a couple years before that because I got married too young, and I lived with somebody who I walked around like a ghost every day. And I stayed for a while because of the children too, until I realized that I found out, not that she was only cheating on me, but that my son wasn't mine. And I got out. There was no reason to stay. People get hurt in life. It's part of life. But this man, and I've talked to him since then. You know, he's never married. Again, goes to see my mother's grave all the time. We never know when our time is up. And that's one thing I learned when I got a second chance. And I got a second chance. I was supposed to die January 14th, 1999. Fact. And I know from a dream I had since I was a child, and I don't dream. And the dream stopped the day I had this auto accident. And what I was basically shown and told when I died, so to speak. Life is precious. Time is precious. And if you look at this story I just told you, all the signs, all the and he said, Scott, and he's always told me, he goes, I live with this for the rest of my life. I should have done it sooner. And he was like, your mother was the only one who completed me in so many ways. This wasn't just about physical. This was deeper intimacy than that. Much deeper. And that's part of what I'm going to get into now. A while ago, I had met somebody online, out of the blue. I was instantly attracted to them, more than physical. It was deeper. I knew it was deep. I found out, that she was married. And in talking that she wasn't happy in her marriage, she'd been married for close to 30 years. She loved her husband, wasn't in love with her husband, and didn't know if she ever really was. And that there was a point in her life before she had the children, the two younger children she has now, that she was going to leave her husband. And that she really wasn't intimate with her husband. And we talked, we laughed, we cried, we started to meet each other, flew all over the place to see each other. And it built, and it built. And I was referred to, and she had watched a show that I did from Valentine's Day last year, where I discussed in part the story I just told you. And I became the man in the moon. And I believe, for me, and what I've learned, true love, I don't think comes along but once in a lifetime. Maybe it can happen a second time. But I'm talking about love that, like my mother and the man in the moon had. That when you see this person, you light up. When you kiss this person, it's magic, long after the honeymoon is over. When you're intimate, you become one. When you can laugh about things that no one else would ever laugh about or understand. Or when you discuss, you're looking forward to hearing from them about their day and how their business is, they went with business, and you boost them up and you lift them higher. They're there to listen and to boost you higher as you are them. And that you do anything in the world to be with them. And you have tons of things in common where you say the same things almost at the same time, or you type them and they show up at the same time. But as time went on, I came to find out and came to truly understand that she was always wanting me to be just the man in the moon. That she wanted to stay married, and I had it filled into my head every day, basically. I'm staying married. I'm staying married. I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving. But I love you. But I love you. Those words, I love you, are to me, very serious. You see, if I was Charlie in the situation with my mom, my love wouldn't have stopped me, or I wouldn't have waited. And there's a lesson in that for him. A serious lesson for him. And he admits that. For many other things that were tied to that. And the reasons why he stayed married. And they weren't very ethical, so to speak. Meaning, and once he figured it out, it was too late. Stayed for money, monetarily, the wife, this, that, divorces, it costly, this, kids, blah, 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 blah. And walked as a ghost in his marriage, as he has put it to me, as a ghost. Going through the motions, but that was it. No intimacy. The soul will never be happy until it's complete. I fully believe this, and I saw this, so to speak. And no matter how close we got, it didn't matter. My love was, even though she told me how much she loved me and she didn't love her husband in that way, and the main thing is she was never leaving. I'm never leaving. And how fair is that to him? How fair is that to anybody? It's a lie. I'm scared, I'm afraid, I'm this. I can understand some people's reasons, but I believe a lot of them to be, most of them, we all make excuses to ourselves. It's a show I'm going to be doing, the bullshit stories we feed ourselves to make us believe that this is the reason why, to justify our actions. And whatever it may be, I believe two people who don't love each other deserve the right to be free, whether they like it or not. Things came to a head, and I found out some things on top of what I was led to believe. And I believe she loved me. I didn't want to face it. And I said I would be the man in the moon for a while. I accepted being the man in the moon. And that's not me. Rule number one to me is never be number two in anything or with anyone, nor should anybody be. And if she truly did love me, as she claimed, I believe she would have separated from her husband because the marriage was strained before I even got there badly. For many, many reasons, which I'm not going to get into. It's not my place to share other people's business. And then for a while, it's like you wonder to yourself, is this person just being who I want them to be? But in reality, there's something else. There's someone else. And I don't mean in my own mind. I mean that they would mold themselves to please me, make me happy, or that they were living out some type of fantasy or some type of just midlife crisis. And I got dragged into it. And I can't blame anyone but myself. Even though I was told about the situation, I would never get involved with a married woman. It's against who I am. Not my style. But the love was, and I was told I was the first. I was told I 30 years, and that no matter what, she would have been with me anyway. But when push came to shove, the minute her husband found out, and he found out a couple times because it continued even after he found out. The minute her husband found out, there could have been a text from 5 minutes earlier, how much she loves you, me, and this is me. After that, there was no more I love you. There was no more anything. It was like this. It was like I did not exist. And I got told I'm never leaving. I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving. And for whatever reason, I'm staying. And I got angry. Meaning, just angry and hurt. And I don't open my heart to many people at all. And I opened my heart to this woman who we shared many things as childhood pains. And that was part of our connection. And we could understand each other. And we could understand the things we've gone through. And then the professional level was incredible as well. But underneath all of this, there was someone else. And I believe it's a frightened little girl, you know? But I'm not going to make excuses for somebody else's behavior because I don't believe in that. I don't believe in that whatever happened to us as children or anything that's happened to us in life should be a crutch or a cop-out to use to get away with bad behavior. And that's where we feed the bullshit stories we feed ourselves. I've been abused worse than many, many people. Horrible stuff. Be in my book, what's coming up. And it's in some of my shows. I mean, horror. I overcame it. I never used it as an excuse. I have never once in my life used my childhood as an excuse for the bad actions I've done in my life. Not once. Not ever, ever, even at my lowest moment, that I make an excuse based on any of that situation. We do what we want to do. And we all have our own issues. I'm the man of the moon on the outside, but I'm not the married one here. She is. Where my mother wasn't. And the times that we shared, incredible. But I was never enough. The love that she claimed that she had was never enough. And from my opinion and others, and not that my opinion matters, but her marriage was horrible. And she lived with rose-colored glasses, and I still believe she does. To justify it there. And there's more horror to the story, meaning being with two men at the same time when you thought that she wasn't. But the minute her husband found out, I was nothing. It didn't matter. The switch was flipped. You don't exist. No more I love yous, no more anything. Nothing. Yet minutes before, they were always there. And me, I'm the foolish one. I'm the foolish one, and I don't even know who this person is or who I fell in love with, to be honest, at this moment in time. Because the person I believed was what I was shown could never be the one to not say I love you. And then I'll hear the excuses that I'm damaged, that she was to say I'm damaged goods. I can't think I'm damaged goods. This is the way it is. I'm married. You're married? You're married. And that's your fallback. That's your out. That was her out. And you knew this, Scott. You knew this. You knew this going in. You'd be the man in the moon. The man in the moon. And then of recent, there's a movie, a shocking movie, called 28 Hotel Rooms on Showtime. And it was brought to my attention. And I watched this movie and I was like, oh my God. It was like a sign. Like a sign. And I urge you to watch this. If you can get Showtime Plus, or you can get Showtime anytime, you just go online and you get it, or you can find the movie somewhere else. It's called 28 Hotel Rooms. You watch this movie and you will see this relationship exact. I mean, even the words that have been said between the two people, and what they did, and the situation was like amazingly, like accurate to the T, in many aspects. And after, it's named 28 hotel rooms, but it came out to be almost 1,900 hotel rooms over the years that they had this affair, relationship. And in the end, and they had both went through things of marriage, children, these things, but they still saw each other and through it. Like my mother and Charlie did. But the words that they said and the pains that they went through, and the woman who was in there and the sufferings that she went through matches the woman I'm talking about. I was blown away, and at the end, after all the years, they decided to both leave their spouses to be together. The precious time wasted in life is critical. People don't seem to understand, many don't understand how precious life is. And that we are meant to be whole and one with someone else. And that's why you'll see people 2-3 marriages, and all of a sudden on the third one even, or several relationships, they meet this person that they're just like, they finally meet their match. Their incredible match. But don't you see, they searched and went through all these, and it wasn't right. It just wasn't right. It wasn't that intimate connection. And I am not talking about lust, or infatuation. I'm talking about a bond so strong that knocks your socks off. That makes you, like, pow. The word they use on the internet from Batman, like pow, bam, like just even after X amount of months and after many trials and tribulations and things, and the intimacy between the communications. I've looked at put myself in her shoes. And again, I say, I believe there's a lot of selfishness there and control. And I will say it. And I'm not to judge, that's just what I got out of it. A lot of selfishness of the things that were said. It was all about her. Even though she would say it was about the kids or because of the security and for fear and this and this and this. It came down to, I'm worried, my fears are I'm going to lose a pension plan, I'm not going to have health insurance, I'm not going to do this. And, during arguments, there was times when she said, I have a good life here. I don't have to work if I don't want to. I don't have to do this if I don't want to. I could do this, this, and this. And I'm listening to this going. And then at the end, but I love you, Scott. But I love you. But I love you. And me, I'm the guy who gave it all. 100%. And as I said, I'm not one to give my heart to many. And I got smacked. And it's my own fault. And I even recently talked to her husband. And a shocking conversation. To the point where, really? How should I say? When two people become codependent on one another, especially when one suffers from alcohol, drug abuse, etc., and they're dependent on each other and they're just cohabitating, and they call that a marriage, that's not marriage. That's a convenience. Those are selfish needs being met. And I would say that because I did it at one time in my life too, and I know, with my ex-wife. Being truly intimate and becoming one with someone on a basis throughout anything. And you can't have that with someone you just love, meaning you're in, that you just love as a friend, or you become a good friend with and you share things together, etc. If you don't have intimacy, like everybody usually say intimacy, people think of sex, making love or physical. No, I'm talking intimacy of the bond of full communication and sharing things, as well as becoming one sexually. And people waste precious time in their lives. And they hurt the other people around them. They think they're doing the best thing, but in reality they're hurting themselves and other people around them, including their children. I believe children deserve to understand what real is and what life is. And if there's two good parents that love the children, and I see it every day. I have the little girl I did a video with today, Cassie, her mother, a client and dear friend of mine, divorced. Both parents love the children. Children are happy. They see their dad, they see their mom, they both love, they show them both love, and they're happy. There's no, they're great in school, so just massive dysfunctions, nothing. Normal, just lifestyle. It's when we put our selfishness, and I don't think there's any other word for it. And I'm sorry, I can't say anything about if there's dysfunction, or if there's this, or if there's that. I know everybody handles things differently, but one thing I do know, and that we're all different, and that my ways are not everybody's ways. The one thing I do know is when people use something that happened to them and they play the victim, and they use that as what their actions to conduct their actions. That's the bullshit stories we feed ourselves to justify bad behavior and hurtful behavior and selfishness. I couldn't stay the man in the moon. I couldn't do Well, even Charlie couldn't. He eventually did. Took him too long though. And it's amazing. The times we're together is wonderful. Wonderful. But I don't even know if that was really her. Or just someone playing out a role with her. I believe the time she was with me is who she really was. And the time she's been at home is not who she really is. Because she can't be herself at home. And if you can't be who you really are at home or with the person you're with, then you shouldn't be with them. None of us should be. And if people don't love you and accept you for you, you shouldn't be. Never conform yourself to what somebody else needs or wants. Be yourself. And I could even see when things got bad and the husband again found out, there was never any real apologies. After I talked to the husband, she got on the phone and said, I gotta go now. Bye. Like it didn't even exist. Like it didn't even exist. Yet an hour before all this, or whatever, a few hours before, it was totally different. It's like two different people. So I don't know if there was ever real love there. On my part, it was. But I'm not a man in the moon. And that's what she really wanted. Her cake and to eat it too. The husband, the house, the financial backing. And here's the screwed up part. Financially, I could have taken care of her. Kids, whatever. Something else there. And either that or the whole thing's a big lie. I don't know. But all I know is peacefully I can go to bed at night that I gave her 100% of my heart. And I gave her everything I had. And that wonderful person, that wonderful, caring, loving person that I got to fall in love with, I don't know if that was real, or like I said, or something created. I'll never know, I guess. Guess I'll never know. If someone tells you that they love you and their actions say something else, or they just want you to be second, not number one, they don't really love you intimately. And it's not that love. Trust what I tell you. I wouldn't want anyone to go through the pain that I've gone through with this entire thing for so long. And the battles that I've been fighting within myself to handle it. Moral battles, you know. And as I said, I really believe if someone really loves you, nothing will stand in the way, and that it can be worked out. And if you're in a marriage and you're trapped, and if you really don't love the person that way, don't be there. It's not fair to either one of them, and don't be there because you're so selfish. It's not fair to the other person. I don't care if they love you or claim to love you or not. We're not here to not fulfill our own destinies and our own paths. Compassionate love, yes. Care for others, be there for others, kindness, yes. But there's a key with the soul, a serious key with souls and love. Love is important. It's everywhere, and I'm going to say it again, not just in the Bible. It's love is everywhere. Love is key. Even if you're not Christian or believe in Jesus Christ or whatever. And I don't preach religion on my show. Bottom line is love. And I don't care if people say, oh, this is corny. It's not corny. It's true. And it's funny when people end up on their deathbeds or something happens like it did with my mother and the man in the moon. Excuse me. When one of them is gone or you're dying, that's when you all realize, oh my God, what did I do? And everybody wakes up every day not thinking they're going to die today. None of us know when we're going to die, and I say to my shows over and over, if you can let me know when you're going to die, you let me know. All I do know is the person that I did fall in love with completely was wonderful, incredible, and I'll miss her. The world is a cruel place. People are not very nice either. And it doesn't seem to be getting any better. Humanity is destroying itself. And history is basically repeating itself. Kindness is missing, real love is missing, and even empathy. Everything's a convenient now. Convenience. Or monetarily, I gotta do this because I need this. So you can't be without health insurance. Legitimate fear or not, think about the core of what that fear is. It's about them. Me. I'll tell you this. Real love to me, I'd give somebody my right arm, my kidney, climb mountains, you name it, I would do it for the other person. I think of movies like the Titanic, and even though it's a film that was created on, I'm sure in the world there's very similar, many thousands of stories that are very similar. Where even in just that movie, she was scheduled to be married to someone else, and it was with the money and the schedule and this, and she chose some petty, lower class man and fell in love with him and then died with him. Well, he died, but kept him close to her heart, and she went and got married and did her thing. But just like with my mom, they never found that was their love. Their life was never the same. They held that in their hearts, and that's you can't stop that. And if Jack lived, from that movie, they would have been together, and I'm sure happily ever after, forever. Because that's the intimate love. That's the real love that everybody searches for. Just look everywhere. It's everywhere. Internet, dating sites, here, there, love. Everybody wants to be loved. And the screwed up part is when some find it, they disregard it. Because most don't love themselves. Good night. God bless. Happy New Year. My best to all of you. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe. And I'd love to hear from you. Email me any questions, comments. Good night.